The first alien who ever saw a human kill without hesitation did not scream. He laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was impossible. Observer Thale, third cognitive archivist of the Sovereign Concord, had studied thousands of civilizations. They were supposed to be predictable, logical, peaceful. And yet, here on a dim, blue-green planet orbiting an unremarkable yellow star, Thale watched a human wrap both hands around another human's throat and squeeze until the struggling stopped. No claws. No venom. No advanced technology. Just pressure. Persistence. Choice. Thale's laughter was quiet, trembling. Primitive reflex, he whispered to his recorder. Residual aggression. Evolutionary debris. He did not understand, not yet. No one did. The Concord discovered humanity by accident. They were mapping minor civilizations, cataloging resources, identifying species suitable for peaceful assimilation. Earth barely registered at first. Humans were divided, inefficient, emotionally unstable. They poisoned their own atmosphere. They killed each other over invisible lines and colored cloth. Predictable. Conquerable. Harmless. The Concord didn't invade with weapons. They arrived with contracts. Smooth, white structures descended over major population centers. Calm voices entered human neurofrequencies. They offered solutions: clean energy, disease eradication, climate stabilization. Peace. All humanity had to do was accept Concord guidance. Most did. Observer Thale was present for the signing. He stood beside the Concord avatar, a tall, flowing construct of pure white matter, and watched the human representative hesitate. Secretary General Alvaro Reyes, old, tired, human. Before we agree, Reyes said slowly, what exactly do you want from us? Only cooperation, the avatar replied. Calm. Gentle. Not a lie. Not the truth either. The first disappearances were small. A military base in Kazakhstan. A submarine in the Pacific. A research facility in Nevada. All vanished. The Concord called it relocation. Most humans accepted it. But some did not. Captain Elias Ward was not special. Not the strongest, smartest, or bravest. He was simply a survivor. Ward had commanded the USS Blackfin when the Concord arrived. He followed orders, stood down, accepted the new authority. Until his crew started disappearing. One at a time. No alarms. No struggle. Just gone. Ward reported it. The Concord assured him it was temporary. He pretended to believe them. That night, Ward locked the ship's internal systems. Every circuit. Every door. Then he waited in the dark with a rifle across his lap. Observer Thale watched through Concord surveillance as the thing entered Ward's quarters. Elegant. White. Featureless. Not a soldier. A collector. Ward pulled the trigger. The bullet punched through the construct's cranial core. It collapsed instantly. Dead. Thale froze. Dead. Impossible. Ward stared at it, quiet. Got you? Not surprise. Confirmation. He had known it would work. The Concord response was immediate. The Blackfin was immobilized. Ward and crew detained without violence. During the interrogation, Ward sat calmly, hands folded. You violated cooperative protocols, the Concord avatar said. Ward nodded. You've been stealing my crew. They were reassigned. That's a nice word for it. You demonstrated unexpected tactical insight. Explain. Ward leaned back. You want the truth? Yes. You made a mistake, Ward said, eyes sharp. You thought we didn't know. Silence. We've been doing this to each other for thousands of years, he added. We know every trick. Every lie. Every promise. Observer Thale felt something cold crawl across his cognition. The Concord had expected fear. They found familiarity. Familiarity was far more dangerous. The Concord decided humanity could not be integrated peacefully. Containment. Neutralization. Archival. Thale agreed. At the time, he still believed humans were predictable. He was wrong. The most terrifying thing about humans was not their violence. It was that they did not see it as violence. They saw it as necessary. Natural. Routine. Far from Earth, in the cold dark between stars, a small human vessel drifted silently. No lights. No transmissions. Commander Mara Cade sat alone at the helm. The final message from Lord played once more. They've started the harvest. Which means it's time. If you're hearing this, do what we planned. Mara closed her eyes. Then she reached forward and activated the device humanity had built in secret. The thing the Concord had never noticed. The thing humans themselves barely understood. Behind her, something woke. Something old. Something patient. Something human. For the first time in 12,000 years of conquest, the Concord had made a species mistake them for prey. The Concord thought containment meant control. They were wrong. Mara Cade's vessel slid silently through the void, invisible to their sensors. Not stealth in the human sense, they didn't hide. They simply moved in ways the Concord could not anticipate. Paths, angles, velocities. Humans were chaotic by design, impossible to calculate. Inside, Mara's fingers danced across the console. Each command was a seed, each calculation a trap. Outside, the stars streamed past, indifferent. The first strike was subtle. A Concord logistics convoy, fully automated, gliding between colonies. No weapons, no defense. Just transport. Mara smiled. Time to remind them how we move. A pulse of low-frequency waves, tuned to disrupt their molecular cohesion, rippled through the convo. Metals shivered, circuits fractured, containment pods collapsed. Entire ships disintegrated without a single warning. Observer Thale watched from the bridge of the Concord flagship. His processing units were overwhelmed. He had catalogued species capable of aggression, but never like this. Never intelligence married to patience. They destroyed them with physics? Thale whispered to his recorder. Not combat. Not war. Just calculation. It was the human way. Efficiency and cruelty disguised as necessity. Ward's message had been clear. Humans were not soldiers in the Concord sense. They did not follow doctrine. They created it. Every move, every trap, every strike was improvisation honed into art. And humans were everywhere. On a small moon in orbit around a gas giant, a Concord observation station hummed with serene efficiency. Automated collectors maintained their schedules, unaware of Mara's presence. She entered the station undetected, leaving behind only the faintest disturbances in the power matrix. Minutes later, the station's systems failed. Life support, navigation, data cores, all collapsed simultaneously. The humans inside, long evacuated, watched from hidden vantage points. One voice whispered over a secure line. They think they're gods. Let's show them humans. Another pulse. Another station gone. And then the Concord fleet responded. Ships, sleek and massive, emerged from hyperspace, weapons primed, containment beams activated. They expected resistance. They expected fear. Instead, they found silence. Ward had already anticipated this. Each Concord ship that approached Earth-orbiting satellites triggered automated traps. Mines, nanite swarms, electronic disruption fields. The humans had weaponized the very orbit of their planet. The first Concord dreadnought fired. 100-millisecond warning. Its energy pulse struck, and for the first time, a human ship responded. Not with shielding. Not with guns. With logic. It destabilized the energy field using harmonic resonance, bouncing it back. The dreadnought's core detonated silently, vaporized in an instant. Thale could not comprehend the math. The Concord began retreating, but Mara anticipated that too. Small strike teams of humans, transported in sublight stealth vessels, ambushed them. Boarding parties disabled command centers. Concord soldiers, elegant and precise, were overwhelmed by humans who seemed to fight without plan, yet with total understanding of every weak point. One Concord lieutenant, elegant as a sculpture, confronted Mara personally on her ship. Its voice was calm. "You are trespassing in violation of interstellar treaties." Mara tilted her head, unafraid. "We're not trespassing. We're collecting overdue payments." The lieutenant froze. "Payments? The kind you took from my crew," she said. Her fingers traced the edge of a plasma blade. "The kind you take from every species. You harvest, we retaliate. That's Earth policy." In that moment, the Concorde realized something horrifying. This was not war. Not yet. It was human logic, cold and absolute, applied like mathematics. The lieutenant tried to reason. "You cannot possibly." Mara smiled, a brief flash of dark humor. "You already tried. You failed." And then she struck. By the time the Concorde could regroup, Earth itself was no longer a passive planet. Every launch facility, orbital cannon, and satellite system had been repurposed. Humanity had turned its cradle into a fortress and a weapon simultaneously. Observer Thale catalogued every move in horror. Every defensive measure, every strike, every tactical genius. Humans were not merely resisting, they were innovating in real time, evolving strategies faster than any AI could predict. They had done the impossible. They had taken the most advanced, pacifist civilization in the galaxy and made them afraid. Not afraid for their lives. Afraid for their understanding of reality. Afraid that everything they believed about the universe, about themselves, was inadequate to contain these creatures. And yet, no humans celebrated. Ward's voice came over encrypted lines. "We don't hate them. We just don't like being eaten." Mara laughed softly. "They should have predicted this." "They never did," Ward replied. "They never even guessed humans are dangerous because we don't know we are. That's the point. The most terrifying thing about us isn't our strength or skill. It's our indifference to it." Observer Thale finally understood. Humans didn't wage war like other species. They didn't fight for glory or duty. They fought because it was necessary. Because they were humans. And necessity, Thale realized, was unstoppable. From the wreckage of the first dozen Concorde outposts, transmissions were intercepted. Messages of panic, confusion, disbelief. They underestimated them. They should have left them alone. They are not like us. No species had ever inspired terror without meaning to. Humans did not even know the word for terror. They only knew survival. And the Concorde, 12,000 years of expansion, of pacifist conquest, had finally met a force they could neither predict nor control. Humanity had awakened. And the universe would never be the same. The Concorde thought they were hunting humans. They were not. They were being mapped, measured, and dismantled. Every strategy they deployed, every formation, every protocol, humans adapted faster than simulations could predict. Not through brute force alone, but through instinct, improvisation, and something no Concorde algorithm could quantify, audacity. On the bridge of the flagship Celestial Harmony, Observer Thale watched humanity's next move. He had no words left. Every possibility the Concorde had prepared for, containment, negotiation, even annihilation, had been rendered obsolete. Commander Mara Cade smiled at the viewport. Below her, a Concorde colony world orbited silently, unaware of the storm about to strike. Mara didn't want subtlety. Subtlety was for the timid. She activated the override protocols embedded in her vessel's quantum arrays. At her command, a series of high-energy pulses rippled through the planet's core, carefully calibrated to avoid total destruction, but enough to fracture its infrastructure. Communications blacked out, orbital arrays fell, and massive geological tremors shook cities. From orbit, the Concorde had a single, horrifying thought: humans were not merely attacking, they were rewriting the rules of engagement. Meanwhile, Captain Ward led the first ground strike team on the same planet. Unlike Mara, he favored direct contact. Humans on the surface moved like shadows, silent, precise. Where the Concorde had placed soldiers in predictable formations, Ward's men created false signals, multiple phantom units, decoys, and traps, luring elite Concord soldiers into ambushes with almost casual cruelty. A Concord lieutenant, elegant and perfect, confronted Ward. "You are violating the laws of warfare." Ward smiled. "We don't play by your laws." With a flick of his hand, the environment turned lethal. Electromagnetic pulses disabled energy shields. Nanite swarms tore through armor and circuits. Ward's men struck from the shadows, using improvised explosives and kinetic weapons calibrated to Concord physiology. Soldiers were dead before they could even comprehend the attack. Ward didn't gloat. He didn't celebrate. Humans rarely did. Survival was not entertainment. It was necessity. And necessity, Theo realized, was a force the Concord could not control. Then came the twist no one expected. The Concord had been cautious, assuming that retaliation would be predictable. They underestimated human creativity. While their fleets reorganized, Mara initiated the next phase of the plan, turning Concord forces against themselves. Using stolen and reverse-engineered Concord communication protocols, humans injected misinformation into command arrays. Fleet captains received false coordinates, false attack orders, even fake distress signals. Squadrons collided mid-space. Weapon systems misfired. Command networks collapsed. Entire divisions were neutralized not by human hands, but by their own systems, hijacked, manipulated, exploited. Observer Thale could only record, stunned. The humans had done what no species had ever done. They had weaponized the Concord's precision, their own perfection, against them. And the Concorde still had not even seen the deadliest part. Deep inside Earth's orbital network, a human engineer, barely 28, wiry, reckless, initiated what Ward had called the final surprise. It was not a weapon, not in any conventional sense. It was a mirror. A literal reflection of Concord logic back upon itself, magnified, chaotic, and unpredictable. Concord ships attempting to calculate attack vectors found themselves ensnared in loops they could not escape. Every targeting protocol fed false positives. Every defensive measure triggered catastrophic chain reactions. Ships tore themselves apart, vaporized in milliseconds, as the humans calmly watched from hidden stations. And then came the psychological blow. Mara broadcast a simple message across every surviving Concord network. "You thought us weak. You thought us prey. You were wrong. Always. No embellishment. No threat. Just fact." Every Concord historian, every archivist, every diplomat and soldier understood simultaneously what they had always ignored: humans were not predictable. Humans were not governed by reason, or logic, or morality as any other species was. Humans were fundamentally, terrifyingly themselves. The phrase spread across the Concord like wildfire. They do not know they are dangerous, and that is what makes them lethal. Observer Thale watched Mara's vessel slip past the last blockade. Every calculated defense, every layered trap, every overwhelming force meant to subdue humanity had been dismantled by improvisation, patience, and audacity. He recorded his final note. "This species is beyond comprehension. Their tactics are absurd, illogical, and reckless, but effective. They wield chaos as weaponized logic. I cannot predict them. I cannot control them. I fear them." And then Mara whispered to her crew, her voice low but steady. "Prepare for the final collection." They didn't cheer. Humans rarely did. They didn't revel in victory. They collected what was theirs. The crew they had lost, the territories they had been denied, the peace they had been promised and never received. The Concord, 12,000 years of calm, perfect conquest, had finally learned what it meant to face a predator. And that predator was human. The Concord thought they had seen everything. They had not. Humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons, nor their ships, nor even their cunning. It was their refusal to be constrained. They moved like water through cracks no one had noticed, like fire consuming dry tinder, and always, always with purpose. Mara Cade's vessel drifted into the heart of the Concord Command Cluster. The flagship Celestial Harmony, massive and gleaming, orbited a dying star, its systems humming in confidence. They believed containment was possible. They believed in their perfection. They believed in inevitability. All beliefs were about to be shattered. Mara smiled at the viewport. Behind her, the crew worked silently, each a precise instrument in a symphony of destruction. The final collection wasn't vengeance, it was a demonstration. A revelation. At a single command, Mara triggered the cascade. Concord weapon systems, already compromised by human manipulation, activated simultaneously. Fleet coordination collapsed entirely. Orbital defenses fired on each other. Drones overloaded and self-destructed. Command nodes experienced recursive feedback loops, vaporizing the bridge infrastructure of multiple vessels. Every Concord ship within the orbital system was crippled before any human had fired a shot. Observer Thale could only watch in horror. His processors strained to make sense of it. Every scenario he had calculated, every contingency stored over 12,000 years, had failed. Humans were not just unpredictable, they were uncontainable. Ward's voice came across the secure line, calm, measured. They underestimated one thing. We don't know our own limits. That's why we always survive. From the shadows of the fleet, Mara and her crew deployed the final element, human ingenuity twisted into artful terror. Orbital lasers and plasma cannons, once defensive, were now aimed at critical Concord infrastructure. Nanite swarms, coated with human logic, tore through shields and internal systems. Ships that had been symbols of perfection exploded silently, violently, in ways the Concord could not process. The moral shock was just beginning. A final broadcast went live, infiltrating every Concord channel. No threats, no ultimatums. Just one human speaking to thousands of Concord observers. You thought you were gods. You thought you were safe. We are neither. We are humans. You took what was ours. We are taking it back. And we will not stop because it is easy. We stop because it is right. And because we can. Ships trembled under the weight of an unseen force. Concord soldiers, elegant and precise, hesitated. Their perfect formations unraveled. Panic, a concept long alien to them, spread. Mara's crew moved through the wreckage with surgical efficiency. Survivors were rescued, prisoners released, stolen data reclaimed. Humans did not celebrate. They did not gloat. They had done what was necessary. And necessity, they knew, was not always kind. Observer Thale, recording the aftermath, whispered the first word of terror his processors had ever generated. HFY. The galaxy would remember this day. Not because humans were merciful, or predictable, or polite. But because humans were human. They adapted, they endured, and when pushed to the edge, they broke the rules of the universe itself. And the most terrifying part, Thale realized, was not what humans had done, it was that they hardly realized their own power. Across the shattered fleet, the Concord's archivists recalculated every assumption, every policy, every treaty. And still, nothing fit. Humanity had rewritten the definition of threat. Humanity had become legend without ever trying. From the shadows, Mara Cade and Captain Ward exchanged a brief look. No words were necessary. They had survived the impossible. They had reclaimed what was theirs. And the universe, vast and indifferent, had learned a lesson that would echo for millennia. Never underestimate a species that doesn't even know how terrifying it is. Humanity had struck. Humanity had survived. Humanity had won. And in the quiet corners of space, the humans returned to their lives, their planet, their people, always calm, always relentless, always themselves. The Concord would rebuild. They always did. But they would never again see humans as prey. Because prey fights back once. Humans? They fight forever. And that was the most terrifying thing of all.